announcements, I would like to introduce Alex and Andrea Polzin. And let's give them a warm welcome. They've been doing a lot of public artwork around here in Emporia. If you drive down Commercial Street, then you see their work. They took a lot of variety of public artwork. And I'm going to pass it off over to them.
All right.
So, let's give them a round of applause.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. We have a third we didn't plan on having on stage with us. We timed up a nap, but it didn't work out, but that's all right. She's pretty good baby. We just had a baby just a few months ago, so we're kind of getting used to all this. So 300 BC is one of the very first recorded hand-painted signs, and it goes on from there. Here we go. And signs have progressed through the ages for hundreds and thousands of years now, and they've become more elaborate over time.
Back in the medieval times, whenever people, literacy was definitely not as prevalent as it is now, they would paint signs or carve signs with images that showed what was going on inside of the business. For a cobbler, you'd have a boot. For a blacksmith, you'd have a hammer. And then through the industrial period, as literacy began to grow, sign painting became a major art form and a trade. And they would have colleges and apprenticeships for people who wanted to learn to do that, and it became an actual career during that time.
And as you can see, they really did progress in stylistic versions. They became letter styles that became more classical and things that were easy to read. Because when you think about signage, we like to think of getting the first thing, of whatever your business may be. We want that to be readable and be able to see that on the fly. Because you only have so much time. You only have so much time to view a sign. And so we want to get the most information to you as fast as possible.
So in the 80s, when vinyl became really mainstream and pre-manufactured signs became more popular, sign painting actually died down quite a bit, and people thought it was a dying art. They actually didn't know that it would survive. My dad is actually one of those artists that was in and active during that time. He actually started his business in 1984. He's celebrating his 40th year as a sign painter this year, and in the last decade, he actually started leaning more towards pinstriping rather than hand lettering, and he's found his niche in that, and so that's super exciting. And this is actually some of the work he was doing in the early 80s and into the early 90s, and he's transitioned and evolved and grown as styles have changed, and
Mr. Foster, he'd be a little upset when we showed some of his early work because he was so much less refined, but still fantastic and readable. This is the 84 to 91, and it's still great. But one thing that I would just comment on, like this jeans custom paint here, he did a black outline, but he didn't put it all the way around jeans, and so the yellow and the purple are kind of similar in tone, and so you can tell that it doesn't read as well, but it still reads fantastic. But you can see that he's learned a little bit from these next years. Because this is a dark gray background, and that white around the numbers, he outlined in black, and that just makes those colors more swap. And here you can see he's used some gold leaf, and then is spun. It's a technique that you can use to put a little bit more of a shine and more of effect on gold, and it's something that we like to use as well.
I'm going to talk a little bit about my history in sign painting. Obviously, I was super into art as a kid, and I drew and I painted as much as I could until obviously I started apprenticing with my dad. But I was around sign painting and painting in general my entire life. I remember being very young and working with him in his shop and helping him clean up and stuff. But in 2006, when I was 15 years old, I actually started my apprenticeship with him. and started actively working with him on site, and he actually taught me. I practiced pulling lines, and I helped him clean brushes, and I backgrounded panels, and at one point he moved out of the country, and I ended up having to cover for him a couple of times, and that's when I ended up painting my first signs. And that was a transformative experience for me, specifically because it reminded me of being with my dad. Very sorry. Really did think she'd nap longer. I actually ended up meeting Alex in 2010, and we started dating, and he started coming with me and my dad to job sites and starting his own format of education with my dad.
And this is my dad here. He's pretty cool too. He is not an artist, but he has always had he put a lot of value on artistic things and on just beautiful pieces. He had a really good friend, Hal Berger. Some of you glass blowers might know or heard that name. He had a shop here in town, and my dad was one of his very good friends. And so I had an opportunity at an early age to go into this guy's shop and see this master at work and see him transform, like molten glass into these beautiful pieces. You couldn't really even see the color in it, but he had this design inside his head. That he transformed these. It was just incredible to me. It was a lot of inspiration. And I got to tag along to a lot of art fairs with him. And my dad kind of set me loose to say, go check out art, go take a look, you know. And I've always had, even though I've never really called myself an artist, I've always felt like I have a deep appreciation for people's work. And I was actually born here in Emporia, moved away, and I came back here in high school. And my dad always encouraged me to take art classes. And one of my first teachers, it's a featured artist here this week, is Mr. Mai, David Mai, fantastic teacher. And one of the first things was my very first art class that I had taken in a larger school. Mr. Mai sat there and he's looking at all of us kids out there and he said, you know, a worker uses his hands. A craftsman uses his hands and his brain. And an artist uses his hands, his brain, and his heart. And I don't know what that was, but it stuck with me so well. And I just had this like vigor to learn more, try new things, and we got into ceramics. I did glassware here in high school, and it was something that really transformed me. And you know, then I met Andrea, and I'm kind of married into this technical trade, and I've had all sorts of different jobs, but there's never been something that has really ticked a lot of boxes for me like this. And I kind of married into it, and they had me. You know, I was just a boyfriend, and so I went out with her and her dad on installs, and the very first job that I did with them was cleaning brushes. It's the worst job for a sign painter, cleaning brushes, oiling them up. And I did that with great vigor, and I helped on installs, and that was a lot of fun for me still, and I kind of dove into that and spent years kind of learning the craft because I was so far behind, you know, the master sign painter. And then Andrea at 16 was running painting race cars. That was her first sign job, was painting some cool red race cars.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about our actual setup and what it takes to actually do a sign or do hand lettering. This is my kit. It looks like a standard metal toolbox, but it holds my brushes and the oil and a slew of other things. But yeah, we use.
This is a paint we use. It's an oil-based enamel. It's called one-shot paint, but it is a highly durable, highly pigmented paint. And we're going to be talking about murals and sign painting. And so this is specifically what we use for signs. And they just flow off the brush very well. And so you can see our brushes. I don't know if you can see the tips of those. They're very long. So our average sign painting brush is like a couple of inches. But you can pull these long, straight lines, you know, 2 to 3 feet before the brush load. We thin it out really well, and then it just really flows off the brush.
And that's being thinned with mineral spirits because it's an oil-based enamel. we use mineral spirits both to thin the paint and to clean the brushes, and then we usually use some sort of oil, I use motor oil, to put it into our brushes and push it into the ferrule. That way, whenever you're finished using the brush, the paint doesn't dry in the ferrule and ruin the brush. So
some of these blue-handled brushes are 40 years old. Those are some of Andrea's dad's brushes that he's been using his entire career. Passed them on to Andrea, and she holds on to them like an heirloom.
We still use them too. They're heirlooms essentially, but they're some of our workhorses, and we use them during a lot of jobs still. And even though we've got several other brushes that work just as well, they're sentimental, but they also work super well, and we still use them to this day. Yeah.
So here's some of our sign painting work. The awesome thing about painting, something that I learned early on, was it's just paint. You can make a mistake, you can fix it, you can repaint, you can remove paint. And that's, what kind of gave me a little bit more confidence to just get in there and start moving. And you can go onto a variety of substrates. Here you see a band that we've done. This is glass, there's glass. And we work on a variety of different substrates. And one being aluminum composite material, which is like our bread and butter for exterior signage. It is 2 pieces of very thin aluminum, and then in between that is plastic. And so it won't warp, it won't get wet, it won't soak and take up water, it won't rust, it won't bend, unless you want to, but it is a perfect material for using outside. And you'll see it all over in a lot of our sign work.
We typically use a transparency projector or even a digital projector to shoot our work onto whatever substrate we're about to paint. And then we use a Sharpie, a pencil, aquarelle pencil like a Stabilo, and draw our design up there and then get to painting.
And sometimes you can see we have to get creative. As artists, you kind of have to do what it takes to get the job done. And with an overhead projector like this, we call it the old school projector, it actually needs to be centered onto the wall. So if you put the projector down low and shoot it up, the letters get wider at the top and then get thinner. And so you're not getting your true design up onto the facade that you're working on. And so we had to get that. We've done this on mural projects, on signage, just to get to it. That is our band, and then a ladder, and then a box, and then the projector all strapped on. And whatever it took to get the job done is kind of what we've done. We've had to learn a lot of handy little things to make it work.
And truth be told, in a lot of different things, that's not super necessary, but when you're shooting something onto a wall that's this big, and it's something important like a logo, you kind of want to make sure that it's as true to the actual logo as possible. That way, it's readable from a distance, because it may not look skewed to you here, but it will look skewed to you from 100 meters from the road.
Right, and when you're working with clients that have logos like this that they've been using for a long time, you really want to hit it and make sure that it is perfect. We just did a Bobcat sign, and they have some very technical specs on how even just the margins around their words and lettering has to be. And it's just a tight thing to do, but you got to tighten up the brush and make sure you do it right. And if you don't, you recode it and you nuke it. And we've done that many times.
We always say painting is the easy part, because prep and projection, getting everything where it needs to be, getting it how it needs to look, that's the hard part, and it often takes us an extremely long time. And then once we get a set, we just fly, and that's the easy part, because you do it and it's done.
Yeah, getting a sign level, is a touchy thing, because sometimes you have a building that might not be level. You can put your level up there and it's level to the ground, but maybe it looks a little cockeyed because the building's a little whatever. And sometimes it is like an optical
level, yeah.
Yeah, an optical level, an optical center, and it's a little bit different. And so you just kind of, you got to wing it. But yes, this is one of the toughest part of the job is getting your layout correctly done. And then the easy part is you're just filling in the lines after that. After 1,000.
Which is still tough, but I mean, you do what you do. So this is an example of the aluminum composite material. Both this and the old rounds and the Sparks Tax and Accounting is all painted on the aluminum composite. It's super versatile. You're able to cut it out into different shapes, and the old rounds is actually about 12 different pieces. and they're all screwed together in a dimensional way. We have pieces of board shoved behind there so that it has a nice buffer between each layer. And like the Bambino sign is all cut out of one piece of material.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things about aluminum composite. It is something, when we're doing signage and stuff, we've always wanted to give our clients something special, something that kind of separates us from every other sign company or every other person that does this. We like to get a little creative, and occasionally we get some freedom. Like old runs, I remember Hubba, he called us and was like, just I don't really mind what it looks like, I just want it to be colorful. And we're like, oh yeah, let's do it. And you get a little bit of freedom sometimes to stretch those muscles and do something that's a little bit outside the box. And this one, the Gambino's Pizza, that one was kind of lettered to look like it has been up there for 25 years. We did we call it faux vintage, where we do like dry brushing, and it gives it the visual that it's been there, that the colors have faded, and that it's been an old sign.
Yeah, that is aged super gracefully. We really enjoy working with both gold leaf and gold foil, and we utilize it quite a bit in our work, especially downtown. We've used it at mods, at Union Street Social, we've used it on the front of trucks, and on several other pieces. It's kind of a technical technique.
Definitely, it's a big learning curve when you're using that. But when we use metallics, because there's metallic paints, but they don't have near the pop that these foils do, or even 23 karat gold. And when we're doing signage, it's just one more thing that kind of draws your eye to the sign. When you're working with a client or working with a business owner, you want to give them the best opportunity to succeed as a business owner. Our number one goal is to bring people into a business. Sometimes our clients, we have to kind of work with them and explain to them, maybe we shouldn't go so big on this. Tell me what you have in your store. Let's put that front and center, and then invite people in so they'll take a look. You want that sign to be inviting, bring people in. And gold is it's kind of a classy material, and it cleans well, it shines, and it makes people just rubbing it and help you look at it. Man, that's cool.
Yeah, it's super eye-catching, and we really enjoy using it whenever we can.
These are exemplars, and this is when I was digging into sign painting. I was 3 years, because not all exemplars are created equally. Some of these, we always wanted to use classical styles, classical lettering and letter styles, and we don't want to use trendy fonts that are going to look, a little aged in 10, 15 years, because we make signs that last so long. Our signs are going to hang up for that long. We want them to look good and continue to draw business in. And this is some of the stuff. We use a Laha block, and we call it one-stroke lettering because the stroke of the letter is about the width of your brush. So if you think you're going to be doing a stroke here, it's not just one stroke, but these colors represent each stroke that you're going to do. So here's your first stroke on this W is this yellow. And then the next stroke, boom, boom, boom. And some of them you have to build up, and you have to sharpen the corners and stuff like that. But using these letter styles I use a lot of the term economy of time, because I don't want us to spend too much time on labor, because then it's way more expensive for a business owner. And finally, you can just cut out whatever font or style you want. But this, it allows us to speed up, and it allows us to give our clients a little bit lesser price. And then this is our casual, which is a little bit more funky, a little bit more flowy, and it lends well to a lot of different businesses, hours and stuff like that outdoors.
My only note on single stroke lettering is that it's incredibly difficult, and that this is like 90% of what I was practicing when I first started my apprenticeship were the strokes to create this sort of lettering, both between the block and the casual lettering style. Just pulling diagonal lines, straight lines, square lines, curvy lines, thousands and thousands of lines, yeah. And just getting a relationship with the brush, because the quill is so much different than a standard painting brush.
When you're rocking like a 2-inch brush, you gotta know where the chisel ends and begins, and where it starts and finishes. As you're pulling into a corner or something, you gotta know where to pull up, and that brush is gonna still flow just a hair. And so it's just a lot of practice to get to where you can use
Now it says murals at the top, but and ultimately these are both murals, but they go kind of hand in hand with the sign painting aspect of what we do. They're on a super large scale. The Quick Comfort logo is probably about 55 feet long and 25 feet high. And it took us about 2 weeks in order to execute. And the one that says boat, that's 60 feet in the air. Maybe not 60, I don't remember.
Yeah,
that was a long time ago.
We ever used it. It was a minimum of 60.
But the technique is a lot of the same. We're not necessarily using the one shot. We are using Nova Color and Sherwin-Williams on the Quick Comfort mural. But the technique is the same. You project. You use either a golden Teflon brush or a chip brush or a ruler, depending on what the moment calls for.
And I don't know if you guys can see, but this is all corrugated metal. So corrugated metal is like a foot of flat metal, and then you have this piece that sticks out about an inch. And so this was his logo, and he was pretty adamant that we get it correct. And it's not so easy to paint on a non-flat surface. And so we really worked hard to get this, but there's some tricks and stuff to help your lettering read well. And I always like to think about a viewing distance. When we're creating these graphics or designs for a sign or a mural, there's a difference between a poster that's sitting in your hand. I don't know if you guys are graphic design students anyway, but when you have a poster sitting in your hand, you've got plenty of time to look at it. There's lots of information, you can intake it, that's great, and then when you're done, you put it down. If you're flying down the road 65 miles an hour and you see a billboard and it has hundreds of words on it, you will never grasp everything in there. So you want to keep it simple when you're doing large scale signs like this. Get it short, sweet, to the point. What are you trying to sell? What is your business owner trying to provide? And we really tighten that stuff up. And sometimes we kind of go back and forth with our clients and tell them, this is what we're trying to do. This is the most important thing. We want it to look good for you.
Next thing I wanted to talk about is specifically prep on brick surfaces, concrete surfaces, anything that's not already prepared when painting a mural. Obviously, once again, we're using our handy-dandy projector, but the preparation of the wall is so important, and we preach primer rather than using a paint primer blend, specifically because it gives your paint something to hold on to. It can be tinted if you feel like you need an underpainting sort of moment. But also oh my gosh.
Priming is so important to us. The first thing we do when we get on the wall, we're gonna do a mural, we take a look at it, we investigate it, we touch it, we feel it, look at our hand, is it dusty, is it greasy? And then we power wash it. We clean it, power wash it, and then prime. Priming is meant to seal the coat underneath there, and then also, like Andrea said, gives it the grip for the paint. But one of my favorite things about priming is it gives you a clean space. It gives you a clean area to start adding your paints in. And when you paint highly pigmented, gray colored paint on top of this, it just bursts. It's so bright, it's true colors, and when you're doing that, people are spending some good money with you to create these things. You want to give them the best opportunity to have the most longevity, the best looking mural for as long as possible. And we kind of try and design for decades into the future. This thing is going to be up, this is a medicine launch, that one will be there for years and years and years to come. And we prepped it right, and it's up there and locked, still looks the same.
And once we've prepped, we typically use Nova Color because they work on a light fastness scale, and I tend to design with the better lasting colors. Like when you get into reds, oranges, and yellows, they end up being degraded by UV rays a lot faster than your blues, your greens, and your purples. But there are different pigments out there that are higher on the light fastness scale that are still in those colors that you need. So we always take into account the direction that the wall is facing, because obviously north-facing wall isn't going to get nearly as much sun as a south-facing wall, and so if you have that shade or that ability to not have as much UV on the wall, then you will have a little bit more wiggle room with what colors you get to select.
Yeah, longevity. And no colors is literally some of the best paint product that we found when we were doing a lot of research into it. I'm a crazy researcher. When it comes to our products and our techniques, I research everything from brushes to paint to prep to our primer. And we're really picky about some of the products we use because we want to, again, go back. We have these clients and we want to give them our best work. And this Nova Colors has been around since the 70s, and they kind of tweaked it a little bit, but when the acrylic polymer first came into like public use, these guys snatched it up and started making paint with artist pigments. And so it is highly pigmented. It looks fantastic. You can't get some of these colors from the paint store. You can't get some of these bright oranges, yellows, pinks from Sherwin-Williams. And so you really, I really, it's my opinion to really use the best quality materials that you can. If you want to do this and do it right and create a name for yourself and create long-lasting works, it's your paint, your prep is so imperative to get right.
I will say that some of the pigments are a little bit more expensive than you would be buying at just the paint store, but not only are they more durable, but it's an investment not only for you, but and your artwork that you hope to last as long as possible, but it's an investment as well for your client, and you're hoping to give them something that will be there for a long time. Like, nobody wants to spend $20,000 on something that's gonna fade, crack, or generally burn out in 5-10 years. So for us, Nova Color is the way to go. I don't know, I'm not gonna preach about Nova Color for too long, but I could.
And back to like the priming too, when you have like a gray or a brown wall and you throw your color on top of this, it'll muddy up. It won't look, you won't get your true yellows, your true oranges and reds, greens. It won't look the same, it'll be just a little bit muddy. And so that's another reason we use that. A primer gives a good clear start.
And one more thing about Nova Color, if you do end up going and purchasing any, it is, they're very upfront about how good of coverage you're going to be able to get. Everything is labeled with their light fastness rating and how, if it's transparent, if it's translucent, or if it's opaque. So just keep an eye out for that, because you don't want an opaque color and then you buy a transparent color and then you have to coat it 5 times, because I've done that and it sucks.
Yeah. And it's a lot of the learning from your mistakes as you go. We started the business and we were painting signs, and Andrea's a fantastic artist. Ever since I met her, she's been painting and drawing for hours. I'd sit and watch her, and she would just get so engrossed in her painting, whatever project that she's on. I just felt like we need to do something with it. She's incredible, and then we started looking at into murals, and just getting that going was amazing.
We did paint the mural on the back of Bourbon Cowboy. This was really a labor of love, not only because we love Emporia and we were excited to do it, but because it was the first actual mural that was painted in the town for 20 plus years. And Alex actually had to fight tooth and nail in order to get this up and kind of open the door for more artwork to come through. And we're super grateful that it has, because I mean, look at the town. 5 years ago, it wasn't this colorful, vibrant space, and now it's just slowly turning into this massive art town. And that's super exciting. I'm not gonna take credit for it, because obviously there are so many people who are in here doing the work and raising the money and making it happen. But at the end of the day, like, it was a major win for the town, for the city to be able to say, yes, this can happen. So I'll let Alex talk a little bit more about that.
This was about 6 months of work and not knowing if we were going to get paid. We had done, this is like our second or third large scale mural, but nothing off the ground. And it was a bear. It was in the historical district downtown. And so you have to reach out to the Kansas Historical Preservation Society and work through some of the details. And so I came to them with all the prep, all the paint I'm going to be using, primer, cleaning, and they said no. I went back. I said, all right, we're going to do this. They said no. And we ended up with a no from them. And we worked with the city, and I got like 3 or 4 no's from them too. We went back to the drawing board, we redesigned, and technically we ended up using some logos, because this was privately funded, and a few businesses like kind sign, and signs are regulated. And so we had to go to the city, talk to them, and we got notes from the city, and then our last ditch effort, we went to a city commission meeting. We got involved, and we were like, you know guys, this is a privately funded mural, a private building, this is a labor of love to Emporia. We really want to see this happen. And the commission agreed. We walked out of the door, high-fiving. We were like, yes, 6 months, and we're gonna get paid. We can actually do it, And then began the work. You can see we actually had to shut off the alleyway. We had a lift in here. The power we had to cut with Evergy, and it's a bar, and so we had 24 hours to get it down, so we were gonna get warm. And so not 24 hours for the whole mural, but just around some of these lighting, electrical power in there. And it was just a bear, right? I think we worked 16 hours that first day, and just to get the projection done, the priming, and a little bit of the painting around the electrical outlets, and from there we had like 8 days to get it done. And we did it on deadline.
Yeah.
On deadline, we made it.
I mean, we were working, like he said, we were working 12 to 18-hour days every day for 8 days. But it was, joy. We absolutely love doing what we're doing, and this is something we worked really, really hard to get. And so completing that first mural here in town was just
it was amazing.
The best.
And it's cool. I look back on some of these original photos, and when you go shoot over there, it looks exactly the same. This is 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And we cleaned it, we prepped it, primed it, and those colors are still popping. That's no color. And that was like one of our first jobs that we used no color with. They're like, man, this is the thing. This is the stuff we want.
Yeah. I'm going to quickly, because we're running a little low on time, I'm going to quickly discuss a design and kind of how we got used to, or how we used to do it and how we do it now. We did a mural in Winfield, and it took us 6 months to get design even settled because we were working with a committee of 15 plus people, and everybody had an idea of what it was supposed to look like. Everybody had a different cultural reference that they wanted incorporated into the actual design. And so it just turned into this huge and you want it to be cohesive when you have that many ideas floating around. And so these are just a few of the different versions of this mural that we ended up putting together. And I mean, time after time, everybody, there were so many notes, there were so many people saying they didn't like something, they wanted something to be changed, they wanted something to be added, and at the end of it, I was like, okay, we gotta sit down. You need to let me know which ones of your cultural references are most important.
Give me a sketch.
And maybe give me a sketch. Have somebody who's a little artistic in your committee sketch out what you guys are thinking, because I'm clearly not hitting the mark. We've been working at this since January. It's May now. We're supposed to get started next month. So let's figure this out.
It was a big learning moment for us to really kind of hone in and kind of get a committee on the same page before we start designing anything. We should have started with simple sketches and then moved on, because each and every one of those were like finished designs that we put together. It's like 60 hours.
Yeah.
Each of those, not each of them 60 hours, but in total, she spent a week and a half doing that. Full work.
And ultimately, we were able to get to a point where they could settle on a design concept, and I was able to kind of piece it together and give them something a little bit more cohesive that they could really all get around. And we came up with a final design, and it's supposed to be kind of a timeline of the city and all the things that happened, because it's for their 150th anniversary as a town. And so just hearing the yes at the end of 6 months was so important, but at the end of it, I don't think I would ever do this again in the same way. I don't think I would send a questionnaire, I would sit and do some sketches with them in person, try to get on the same page before I even put stylus to my screen, because this was just so much work, and it ended up not panning out for 90% of what I had initially drawn. So just try to get everybody on the same page before you start designing.
But in the end, we got everything together, and it turned out right now. It took us a lot of time, but it was amazing. It was a great piece.
We've also done several color by numbers, paint by numbers murals in town. This specific one was done on a weekend during World's Disc Golf
Yeah, that Art Walk.
and then the first halfway to everywhere. And so we had over 300 people come to this tiny little building, and some people put on one brush stroke, some people were there for hours and painted, and I ended up having to freehand an entire another wall because we ran out of space for people to paint and they just kept coming. But we have prepared, I think, 20 different colors between all the different greens, a couple creams, a couple pinks, and yeah, it was just a really great time. This is only one of, I don't know, 3 or 4 different community murals that we've done like this.
It was such a cool opportunity though, because we met so many people. There were foreign exchange students, there were people from Africa, from China. There were so many people that like got to hop in and do it. Like, even the ones that like, I'm not an artist, we would encourage them to get on there and just throw something on there. And like people really just love that. And it's a bear to do something like that. I'm not gonna lie, because there's a lot of work that has to go in, like cleaning up lines afterwards. And we spent hours after the fact doing that, cleaning up drifts, things like that. But it was so much fun to see so many people having fun and putting a brush on these walls.
So just as a reference, these are some of those murals that we talked about that are all complete. You can't really see the trolley house one because it's in the shade. But we've done a few large-scale murals, and when they're finished, it's just a lot of fun to see the hard work pay off and to see it in its new home.
And you know, kind of going back to the sign painting aspect of it, we've always wanted to kind of keep differentiating ourselves and bring some of our talents everywhere where it overlaps. And so we really like doing our lettering, and we go back to the traditional styles. You know, this thick and thin in Kansas is you'll see this from like the 1920s. You'll see this in the 1950s, and they all still look fantastic. It's not, you know, swoopy, trendy font or letter style. It's something that is going to look good forever. And this is that window jobs. Now there's so many details. It was like
120 feet.
It was like a full block, and there's just so much in there. Like every single one of these little people, Andrea had to kind of like letter, or not letter, but paint. Both of us did this. So this is kind of neat, right?
Yeah, this is the last thing.
Proposals, RFQs, and permits. It's something that you kind of are going to have to deal with as you become a professional artist. And you know, we want to do this for a living. We don't want to do this for free. You know, we love beautifying. That's our number one goal, is to beautify our spaces. But we also want to live. We also want to eat. You know, and so when you start getting yourself out there, there's a lot of technical stuff that you gotta do. You gotta get a good resume together. You gotta get a statement of interest for each proposal. Generally, people will reach out, but also you gotta hunt for the next hero, the next call for artists. And generally, they start with an RFQ, which is a request for qualifications. That's where your resume comes in, any achievements, statement of interest, and then your portfolio. You send that along, they'll read it out, and then they'll ask you for a proposal. And you know, we've started to go after some larger scale murals and stuff. And generally, with proposals, they're going to pay you for your time. If you're going to do a full-on design, you're at least going to get a little bit back to get it started. And permitting is something that's not, you know, fun or interesting, but it's something that you need to do if you're going to be professional. We have always wanted to do things by the book, and we've always wanted to do things professionally, and never have anything come back from our clients. You go and throw a sign up without a permit, and you might get away with it, but then the city might not. And they might see it, and then they'll start actually fining you every day that sign's up. That's not been, you know, permitted. And so you have to go get a license, a sign installer's license. You gotta pay for a permit, and they generally want you to be bonded because there's some engineering that goes into signage, mainly to cover people's tails. You know, if a sign fails or anything falls down and hurts somebody, you really want to have some safety net there. And so we don't need to be insured, but we actually have. It's been required on a few projects, so we kind of bit the bullet, and we have like insurance of up to $1 million, and it's like a minimal cost of getting that insurance, but it is so necessary. It gives you a lot of peace of mind when doing it. And you know, I got good friends in the permit office now. They kind of help me out. They help me figure things out. And it's a interesting thing, honestly, to me at least, less of the art thing. So yeah, we're A&A Signs and murals. We'd be happy to take any questions if we kind of skimmed over something that you guys are curious about. We got one here.
So I've been wanting to experiment with sign painting
Yeah.
for a while. I think it's so cool,
Yeah.
it's so satisfying to look at.
Yeah.
How would you recommend someone who has no experience get into something like that?
That's a fantastic idea because I have been there. Luckily, Andrea's dad has been a great resource for us. I call him on the fly sometimes. I'm like, hey man, I got a question. But there are a couple of groups on Facebook that have so much knowledge. They're like people that are 60 and 70 years old that have actually went through apprenticeships. And they are craftsmen, tradesmen. And it's a tight group, and it's like a no-nonsense group. But it's called Sign Painting Support Group, is what it's called. And there's just some other ones out there. But search around, find something like that, and then really it's about pulling lines. And it's not fun. You're gonna be pulling up and down hundreds of lines left and right. But to get started, I would probably use like a good temper paint. And you're gonna want to thin it out so it's like pretty loose. And what do you call it? Like consistency of milk, Andrew always tells me. A little bit thicker.
A little thicker than milk.
A little thicker than milk. And a longer brush. And I can give you some recommendations at the end.
And oftentimes when you do get started, if you were to go and get a small half pint of not Nova Color, oh my God, One Shot and a quill from Mac Brush, and just pull lines. But if you get a brand new can of One Shot, you should be able to pull directly out of the can, and that'll be a fairly good consistency for you to start with because it's a little bit thicker and it wouldn't need as much thinning, but it'll still pull really, really well for you and you'll get some good lines. But like, it sounds really boring, but straight lines, twist the brush, get your angles going, get some curves, practice that. And the only tip I'll give you is to focus your weight on the outside of where your line's actually gonna live. Because you can come fill in the rest of that line, but unless you're doing a single stroke line, in which case you just wanna anchor it right in the middle. So, good luck, man. I can't wait to see what you do.
Yeah, and it sounds like ESU wants to put on a workshop, and so I think that we're going to come back in the future and do a workshop for actual sign painting and have everybody pull some lines.
Are there any
questions? You got one back here?
How do you find your exemplars?
Oh, exemplars, the sign painting support group. That's one of the group that I'm in, and those are fine examples. Because there's a lot of exemplars out there, but you don't want to learn a bad exemplar. I don't know, maybe it's just my eyes been trained over the years, but sometimes you'll look at a sign or a letter style and it just doesn't quite look right. Maybe like the cross member of an A is a little low or a little high, and it just looks a little funky. You're like, man, that's weird. It's probably wrong. And there are rhymes and reasons, just like art. There are a few rules to painting correct letters, and so finding some good ones on Sign Painter Support Group, man, I've learned so much from that group, and there's a little bit of a work in there too.
Anybody else?
How much time do we have?
We're pretty much up on time.
Okay. You can find us, we have a lot of
Yeah, what's up?
I got one question. I think it's interesting working on these signs for like businesses. Have you ever had situations where if they want a logo or something like that on a wall, but you need to make sure that you're getting the colors right because if it's like, I don't know, copyright logo or something like that. I don't know what's the kind of process to go through.
color matching.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, Andrea's a pro on that. She's awesome.
Okay.
But yeah, we do it by eye. Sometimes we do have a CYMK color code that they send us, and then we usually practice matching. Our tags and handles on Instagram and Facebook are A&A Sign Writing. You guys will look us up. We have tons of signs. Walk Out Commercial. We got lots of stuff up there, and I think that's it for us.
Yeah, thank you guys all for coming and enjoy Art Walk.
If you look around right now, all this stuff, as far as I can tell, is all handmade. So when they did the remodel, they did it right, they did it well, and all these metallic a beautiful space, and it's a way to use paint. You know, there's always something new. So thank you so much, y'all. Y'all have a good day. I appreciate it. We're going to walk. If you see someone, say hey.
To support the ESU Art Forum program, please visit emporia.edu/art. Click on the Events tab, scroll down to the Art Forum link and click, then scroll down to the Support Art Forum button and click. Finally, choose your donation level and click on the Continue button to complete the process. We appreciate your support.